Good evening and welcome to another edition of Business and Financial Raw Talk, a no-holds-barred forum for leaders and innovators where we bring experts in their industry to push the envelope, level up your thinking as it relates to positioning yourself for success both in business and finance. And I'm so excited that we have none other than Amanda Fludd here joining us. And you are in New York, correct?
Yes, I am in New York. I'm so excited. Woo, y'all get ready to talk now.
Well, for those of you who don't know Amanda is a psychotherapist. You have a private practice. You also are an adjunct professor, a corporate trainer, and you help women to elevate their life by dealing with the fears, the guilts that can hold us back as a life coach. So welcome to the forum today, and we are going to be talking about the second pandemic. And I know women are thinking, okay, are you talking about the Delta variant?
As if they're coming back again.
Yeah, no, we're not talking about the Delta variant. We're not even talking about COVID-19, but what we're referring to is, for those of you that aren't aware, this month is Mental Health Awareness Month. And the second wave, the second pandemic, is the impact that this current pandemic is having on the mental well-being and health of people overall, but how it has a disparate impact on communities of color. And so we want to dig right into that because I know, Amanda, you have a passion to help women of color. And I think it's a much needed conversation, especially for those of you who are coaches out there or mentors or consultants. You need to understand the people whom you serve, especially if they don't look like you. Right. So I'd like to get your thoughts on what is happening within the African-American community or just communities of color as it relates to dealing with mental health and maybe even the taboo surrounding mental health.
Right. And, it's awesome to have a platform to talk about it. And I think that's our biggest issue, is that we don't like to talk about it, right? You can't talk about family business outside the house, right? And we're very good at, putting on our lipstick and getting our eyes bright and getting the clothes together. But we never take off the mask, right? And really deal with the issues that you deal with when you go home, right? When you do take off your clothes, that stress that's there, that worry that's there, that anxiety that's there, those conflicts that are there. And I think the problem for us is, while we're really good at holding it together and showing up, we're not good at just opening up and really being vulnerable, right? And that's because it's very uncomfortable to really speak your truth. As much as we say, live your best life, honey, and speak your truth, it's a very filtered truth. And the more we keep our secrets, it adds and builds. And then that foundation starts to crack a little bit. This pandemic has shattered that foundation with the level of stress and worry that we've had before this, going into this, and now as we get back to work to figure out what our new normal is.
Oh, now I'd like you to dig a little deeper into that, because even when you think about before the pandemic, the level of stress or the microaggressions that communities of color deal with, that those who are white don't necessarily have that same experience. And I know we hear, at least I do, even in this community, women will say, well, women are women. We're all the same. We all have the same experiences. And I think we all have similar cares. We want quality of life for our family, and we want safety and security and a good future for our children.
Good life, the basics. We all want that for sure.
Right, but there's some very distinct differences in what we face and how it can impact us, our emotional and mental well-being.
Black people have always been behind, right? So, our fight has always been different because we're starting from way in the back, trying to catch up with our finances, trying to catch up with our education. And that already changes the game, right? And especially as a woman, right? If you think about just the disparities between men and women in the workplace, and men earning more, it's even less than for a Black woman, right? Or another woman of color, right? So So we're not equals. And I think we also have to like own that, because we're like living a false narrative if it's like, oh girl, we're the same. No, because you have more access to things because the color of your skin is different, right? Or because your family was ahead historically and you are ahead in terms of access to resources, access to quality care. We don't have that, right? So
Right.
we've got to work a little bit harder. And that's also where our stress and distress comes in. And I'm not saying there's not some non-colored folk that, don't have to work hard and maybe, didn't have the same access to wealth and things like that. I'm sure that's out there too, right? And we totally respect that. But we're also asking that we need to be acknowledged too, that we've always had that. And we slowly make steps forward, and then something happens and it sets us back. And that fight to be equal, that fight to be the same, that's stressful sometimes, whether or not you even realize it, right? If you're fighting for your money, you're fighting to just have food on the table, to keep a job or 3 jobs, like that's stress.
Yeah, and I think it's important that as women of color that we really stand in our truth and express it, and not. I was challenged last week to take an experience and whitewash it, and I said I can't do that to make you feel comfortable. This is the reality, and if we can come together with collective minds to come up with solutions, that's one thing. But if you're telling me to discount an experience, then that's not right to make you feel comfortable. Are you following me?
And we often have to like minimize ourselves to make someone else feel comfortable, right? Or we don't even know how to approach it. Like, as you said, that I think about a work setting situation where another white colleague, I mean, clearly she treats the Black clients a little bit differently, right? But she can't see that herself. And it's really hard to sit there and see that and try to figure out to say, like, you're a racist, right? There's a clear difference in how you talk to the Black children versus the white children, how much time you spend with the Black children versus the white children, how you perceive yourself as safe versus the Black versus the white children, right? And it's hard sometimes even within yourself, because you struggle with, how to make this okay, really for you and, for the person having this experience as a child, and then with your colleague, right? And like, we don't want to always rock the boat, but sometimes we have to decide to, maybe it's time that we disrupt things a little bit, right? And really just put things out on the table.
We have a few comments. I'm going to pull those up. So, very true. Not always easy for women to speak their truth.
Right.
And Lotus Ritchie, who is amazing, she said, it is without question that we experience some luxuries because of the color of our skin for those who are devoid of melanin. The question is, how do we come together to work together to share the stories and express our ideas that will create positive change? It is far beyond time for us to continue to be the horse. A conversation, we must take action collectively.
I love the idea of collective action. And I feel like there's 2 things to that. I think that we have to be aware of ourselves too, right? Because we can't always be the ones fighting all the time and explaining all the time, like who I am, why I'm this way, why my hair is this way, right? Because that's exhausting and that takes energy from you. And sometimes in the background, that's what's contributing to your stress, your distress, right? Which might show up as, I can't sleep, like I hate going to this job. And all the things that you may start to even feel about yourself, because you're always on guard to defend yourself at work or outside, wherever, because of, the color of your skin, right? So how do we do that? We've got to take care of ourselves first and decide, one, if we feel like having that fight and that conversation today, because it could just be, girl, you need to read a book. Like, I'm not going to tell you what you need to know at this point about my people. Or we pick and choose our battles, or we decide this fight is not for me today, but let someone else do that, right? So I think work on ourselves and then figure out having those conversations with other people so they can see us. But at the same time, they got to do work too. We can't always be working. We've got to hold them to task to say, you have to listen, right? And I just need you to hear me and maybe try to be just a little bit empathic.
Yeah. We have some more. We have some more comments, but before we get to that, I'd like to you to address this. So when we're thinking about, like right now, the whole Debbie movement, diversity, equality, belonging, and inclusion movement that's out there, and especially in the corporate workplace. I think the conversation needs to be had. We understand we're trying to get to a solution, but when we're asking people of color to revisit that point of pain, let's talk now about what that can do to someone's just mental well-being, because we have to go back and, like you said, we have to explain over and over and over again this from a point of pain, from things that we don't want to revisit. We know it's there, but now I have to explain it to you.
Right. And that's what trauma can look like. And the thing about trauma is you could witness it for sure, and it could be your experience, or it can just be hearing somebody else's traumatic thing. That could be traumatic for you, right? We even have historical trauma, like just knowing what's happened to our people or our family along the way, and hearing those stories, that can impact you deeply as well. We've had a really rough year, right, in terms of the things we've had to see and endure, whether or not you wanted to, because it blasted from everywhere. And that sits on you, and it sits on your mental well-being, whether or not you realize it. And the more you see it, it starts to work on you, whether or not you realize it, right? Again, impacting your mood, how you may deal with people. I remember there was this point where I was like, I don't even know if I could trust these people at work, right? So if I can't even trust you, now I'm supposed to sit down and have a conversation with you. I don't know if that's fair, right? Or because all this is happening, you want to ask me as the Black person to have a conversation with everybody and to tell them about Blackness. I don't know if that's fair. So sometimes we do position people to be hurt again, and we're not prepared for that. It's like asking someone who's experienced like a sexual assault to tell me your story, right? Just because I want to hear it, right? But who are you? So sometimes by asking us to tell our story, how we feel, we may not be ready for that. So I think part of this is assessing, like reading the room, find out if your people want to talk about it, right? Maybe it's a situation where, I don't know, the other workers need to have a conversation first before we have these inclusive conversations. So I think it's great to have us talk, but, we have to make sure that we're also ready as that individual to have that conversation.
And what you're saying is so key, ensuring that we're ready, and as employers, as corporate America, being accountable and responsible for uncovering and unpackaging that pain, because it is a form of PTSD. And if you trigger someone who's not ready, how do you have the resources? I know one individual works with corporations in developing a mental health survival kit. Do you have your survival kits in place to resuscitate this person that you basically flatline emotionally? I want to read a couple more comments, if I may. This is from Lotus. I just was a whole Stannis show this morning and was interviewed by a Caucasian woman, and we talked about racism, not just here in America, but globally. And it is a pandemic that racism is causing and has been causing for years. The question is, do we continue to put on a mask, or do we face it head on?
And I think it goes back to if you're ready, right? Because same thing, I would not ask that sexual assault survivor, like I'm a trauma therapist as well, and we don't just jump to your story, right? And a lot of times it's not, I don't even want to know your story. I just want to know how it impacts your life, because there's a level of readiness that has to happen, right? We have to make sure you have the tools to be okay once we start to unravel that. And I think the same thing applies in your work and corporate settings as well. And, diversity, inclusion, it can look a little bit different. It doesn't always have to be that we're talking about race, right? How we get along, and microaggression. It could also be about how we heal, right? It can also be about how we regulate our emotions, right? Because we're also having little emotional reactions to each other, right? If I'm walking past you and I don't feel safe, that's a problem, right? If I don't trust you as my manager, that's a problem. right? If I don't even want to sit at the table because I don't know what you're going to say, right? Like that's a problem. And it becomes an emotional problem, right? Because it may make me angry. It may make me nervous, right? So maybe part of our work is also about that side of wellness, which is making sure we have the tools to regulate things like mindfulness, things like incorporating yoga and movement, right? Our people, we're movers, we're singers, we're dancers. Like we got to let it flow through the body. And maybe we need that also to help us kind of heal and move forward.
Now, as a psychotherapist, you are part of the 17% women of color, I would say women and men of color, who represent the whole psychotherapy industry.
Can I tell you that number is actually like 4%?
Really?
Not a lot of us. Yeah, we're like an extinct or going extinct breed. So, and we see it because my wait list is like 2 months long on the therapy side. And like all of my colleagues, like we don't even ask if you have openings anymore. We're a very small circle, right? And I also think it's really important to say that too, because if you are someone that's been looking for therapy and it's been really hard to find somebody, like that's also part of the reason. So don't feel bad that we're not getting back to you or you can't get an appointment. It's not that folks don't want to work with you. It's that there really is not a lot of us out there. Like we're slim. And that's also why like I teach too, right? Because I want to really influence a new group of clinicians so that we can really get out into the field. And that's why I also try to work in different ways, because you may not be able to get to therapy, but like if we're infusing things into the workplace, we're getting to you, right? Therapy is a place of like really dysfunction where things aren't working in your life anymore. We don't need to work from there. We need to work from a place of prevention, right? That means getting in earlier, right? That's why as a coach, I work that way too. Like, girl, we're going to get you these skills so you can get through it, give these goals and these dreams. Don't wait for it to shut you down. So yeah, it's not a lot of us.
And I like what you said, that you're looking at, obviously you're there clinically to help individuals that may be in that dark space, but you're also looking at being proactive and giving us as a community the tool to have the conversation, identify where we may be, ask for help, but then the tools to navigate or maybe even safeguard ourselves against what life may throw to us. And when we think from a medical standpoint, just globally, with here in the US at least, minority groups feel comfortable dealing with people who look like them, because it's like, I know you're going to be able to understand certain pain points that I go through. And when you said that number is even lower, that's scary to me, because I think, what access to care, to treatment do we have if I feel that I really need to sit and talk to someone who can relate to the struggles and the challenges that we as a community may be going through?
Absolutely. And access raises a whole nother issue, because, there's not a lot of clinicians, there's not a lot of clinics, there's not a lot of places, period, even within communities, and particularly communities of color. Right. And if it is, it's more of like this factory feel, and it's not quality care. Right. So we're constantly fighting for everything, even just for a drop of love and nurturance and skill on ourselves. Right. So, it's really, really challenging. But, I hope that folks try to just do little things to invest in themselves if they can't get to that person that looks like them. But it's important, because just like you may not be ready to talk about it, you don't want to always have to be explaining yourself. You want to get somewhere where you sit down and they get you, right? I'm Caribbean. Some people will come to me because they're like, my mother did this, right? She used to beat me. And while that might be like the ACS call somewhere else, or like adult protective services at this point, we get it culturally. Right. And we're not condoning it, but we get that that's part of the cultural makeup. And I don't need you to explain that to me because you're worried about what I'm going to do with it. I get it. Right. We get the mannerisms, we get the sayings, we get how we may show up or dress, and we don't have to worry about someone judging us. Right. Or maybe because we put together that someone is thinking, well, something can't be wrong with you. You got a job and you look good. Like, you made it. I can look really good and still suffer with depression and anxiety and worry and need help, right? So there's a lot of just assumptions that happen between different cultures. So sometimes it's easier to show up and start with someone that looks like you because it takes that part off the table. We don't have to worry about who's going to understand me. That's gone.
I would like you to, again, in honor of this month being Minority Mental Health Awareness Month, I'd like you to specifically address the women of color who are listening live and will listen to the replay, and what can they do as far as, like you said, we can tend to wear the mask. We can look the part. We can be calm. We can assimilate and do what we need to do during the day. But then when we go behind closed doors, it's a different world. So again, from your lane of expertise, what would you say to these women who are really, they're lost? They know they are, but they don't know what to do, and any support that you can offer to them.
I think for those listening, if you're listening now, you're listening on the replay, if you could put in the comment box one word that describes like how you really feel, right? And how you really feel when you get home and it's just you, or you're home and all the kids are running around and, the laundry's got to be done and I've got all these other things to do. What is that word that describes you? And put it there, right? Even if you have to sit with that for a second. How do I really feel? And put it there. And why I want you to put it there is because I want you to see that you are not alone. A lot of times we feel like we're the only one as women going through things, and that we have to carry that load and make it good and make it better and just kind of make it work, and at a consequence to ourselves. And sometimes that also means sacrificing our own goals, dreams, and visions because we feel like we have to be there for everybody else, right? But I want to challenge you to think about it like, can I honor me as well as be present for everyone else? And what might that mean, right? Could it mean, I don't know, saying I need a day off? Could it mean asking for a little bit of help? Could it mean I've got to find a space where I can tell somebody really what I feel, really what's behind that word, so I can take that burden off of me a little bit, right? Because think about it. If you, like in your purse, we got a lot of stuff in our purse. If I take out something from my purse, I now have more space for something else. So if I take off some of this emotional stuff, I've got space now for something else, right? Maybe for joy, maybe for happiness, maybe for peace, maybe for excitement again, maybe for the things that fuel your purpose, okay? Because anxiety, depression, stress, wanting to please others, wanting to be perfect, putting off your dreams, all of that steals from your life. All of that is clogging your purse, clogging your life, and you've got to take a second to just let some of that go to create space for something else that works. So I hope that answers your question. I feel like I went around the world.
No, it was good. I'm going to go over some of these comments, and then I want to turn it over to you to tell people a bit more about you. So people of color on a whole have been traumatized for hundreds of years, and trauma shows up in just about everything we do, from internal, external expression, right down to the illnesses that are caused at a cellular level.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother
It's deep.
Our discussion right
I want
there.
to recognize the word trauma because we don't understand that it's trauma. Trauma is simply anything that's happened to you that you felt out of control and then you just really lost control, and it still impacts your life. So it may still show up in other areas, I think, like Lotus is saying, right? So it could be like just as simple as there's small traumas, like breaking up with a relationship, right? Or losing something small and significant. We think only of like sexual trauma sometimes, or like race as a trauma in itself, right? Police brutality is a form of trauma, but it could be microaggressions in the workplace. It could be losing a job. It could be losing a relative, things like that. It's very specific to the person, and it's just something where everything feels like out of control, right? And you still experience after the fact thoughts of it. You're feeling really down and out. Certain things remind you of it. And it's hard for you to move through your day because that's still in the background, right? So I want you to at least have that to look out for that, right? Whenever you don't feel good and it's lasting a long time, you need to talk to somebody, sis.
Well, thank you for elaborating on that definition. Now we got a long one here. I think it's a great point that she made regards to sexual assault. As a victor over sexual assault, it was a decision to tell her not to tell. However, our skin shows up whether we decide to tell her not to tell. We must assume that just because people are people of color, that they are ready to visit the story. I have a psychology degree, and I've worked with thousands of people who've been traumatized in various ways, and we cannot and should not expect that they're ready. And I think this was to just show up.
Mm-hmm. Right. Ready. You get to say if you're ready. If you're ready to talk, ready to share, whatever that is, right? That is our power.
Yes.
Our voice and execute that power. Sometimes that power is to say, I need help. This is hard. This is not working. And I need a little something else, right? Come on, minorities. Let's go.
Now, are you familiar with this book that Lotus recommends, The Sister of the Yarn by Bell Hooks? It speaks to women of color, internal loading, and the myriad of other things that will help encourage and empower both men and women.
No, I'm not familiar, but sounds like a good read, though. And that's a great way to pour back into yourself, right? Because we're always pouring out. So I think taking time to read, getting into things like podcasts, those are great ways to kind of reteach and refuel yourself as well. Phenomenal.
Now, I know our listening audience may be thinking, okay, we're talking about mental health. We're bringing in the racial piece. What does this have to do with business and financial raw talk? Well, it has everything to do with it. Right?
Everything.
Because if this here is not together and aligned emotionally, your ability to advance, to be creative, to really live and express your genius as you were designed to be, is stalemated. So I'm going to turn that over to you.
There's no room in the purse. Right? So where's your dream going to go if your stress and anxiety is in there? Your mental health, to me, is your wealth. Right? Because if you cannot work through your emotions under pressure, if you are stressed and burnt out and you can't handle that, if you are sad at the end of the day, during the day, before the day, and it's affecting the quality of your life or simply your ability to finish a task, then what do you have, right? So this is why you've got to address it individually. As organizations, we have to address it. I think mental health is like the largest expense that agencies and corporations has, and that's going to continue to go through the roof because of what's happening with this pandemic. Burnout has always been high. Stress rates have always been high. Absenteeism now is going up. So it does affect your workplace, and we can't ignore it, right? So we've got to figure out how to be flexible with our workers, how to be flexible with ourselves, how to create more spaces to talk about what it means, and whatever that means, the impact on your work, race, productivity, and what we can do to really help each other move on.
Can you believe we are almost out of time, Amanda?
Gotta talk about this all day.
I know. So I want you to take the last 5 minutes to tell our listening audience what it is that you have to offer, how they may be able to contact you, because your contact information is here below. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
And I so appreciate that. So, in terms of therapy, I do want to put that out there because we don't always know there's so many resources. And I'll just give you a few. So Open Path Collective, I believe .org is one of them. If you don't have insurance, they offer low cost services as well. Therapyforblackgirls.com, Therapy for Black Men, cliniciansofcolor.org. Those are all searchable sites that you can look for a clinician that looks like you, and that probably also takes insurance. A lot of bigger businesses also offer like EAP services, and you can access that for free. And it usually gives you a lot of sessions for the year. So know that you have those resources. If you're like, you know what, I'm not to the point of like depression, anxiety, most of us are anxious and we don't recognize it. But if you procrastinate, you put stuff off, perfectionist, like that's all a form of anxiety. I would suggest that you look into something like coaching, right? And my work is all about the emotional back office. So helping you to look at how you think about things. If we change how we think, we change how we respond. So a lot of my work is about that through coaching and as a therapist as well. and just being in tune to your mind and body and what's happening. Like I said, Black folk, minority folk, brown folk, we're very body feelers, and we've got to reconnect there. So please, you can, we can work individually with coaching. I do more group programs because I think we learn best from each other, and I love for us to pour into each other as well. So the information is there, amandafludd.com/coaching, and you'll see the options that are available to you. And I'll double back to the group and post. I have like a free workbook thing, which I think is cool. So you get to understand how your thoughts work, right? Why we're so critical of each other, how to look at that and challenge that, because sometimes we're our worst enemy, right? Because we know what everybody else is going to do already. But we're very good at beating ourselves up, and we've got to learn to take care of that, right? Take care of you first, and then we can navigate the rest of the world. So my pleasure.
Oh, this has been great, Amanda. Thank you so very much for being here. We definitely have to have you come back. I think this has been amazing. We have another signature show called Celebrate You Live, and that reaches another group. So we'll talk about you coming back and just sharing your genius to celebrate you.
Protect your wealth and your legacy, people. It starts with your mind.
Yes, yes. Well, to our listening audience, thank you so much for joining us this evening for our edition of Business and Financial Raw Talk, where we were with Amanda Fludd talking about the second pandemic. And no, it is not the Delta variant. So we encourage you, reach out to Amanda, check out her website, see the services that she has to offer, and get to understand what mental health warning signs are, those indicators, your triggers, so that you can maintain the healthy state of mind that you need to live your dreams and live them to the fullest. So again, with that, thank you again, Amanda. I'm LaWanna Bradford with the Bradford Group, as well as Bradford Group Consulting, here with you for another edition of Business Financial Raw Talk, a no-hold-barred forum for leaders and innovators, and we will see you next week. Bye, everyone.